Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
New 52 book.
Somebody clip this one.
Welcome to Comics League Movie Night. I am Jared Axios. I am here with Nick from the Phoenix Press. What's up, brother?
What's the matter, Jared? Do you want to live forever?
Hoorah! So today we are discussing Halo Foward Unto Dawn, otherwise known as the best Halo series ever.
Otherwise known as the only Halo series that I actually care about.
Because the other one only has one season, and that's season 2. So let's define people at home. We got Lord Throth. We have Geek Defense. Worst part about the Halo series is that we will probably never get a Forerunner Saga in live action. Because in terms of the general audience, when they think of Halo, they don't think of the Forerunners. That's why. But
it would be like making a Mass Effect series and having it be about the Protheans.
Which you could... Yeah, you can't do that. You really can't do that. The best Halo series is Space Above and Beyond. Where's that? I don't even know.
Well, actually, we did get a Halo movie. It's called Starship Troopers.
Kind of. That's more of a Helldivers movie, though. I know, but it's enough. Yeah.
No, Jared. If you've ever actually read the Starship Troopers book, you realize, oh, so this is where they got the idea for Halo. Like there's actual power armor and all that stuff.
He's like, there is no Starship Troopers movie. Yes, there is. So, continuing on, let's discuss. Authenticity happy. Hang on there. Yes, Nightfall was good, but this is way better. Maybe we'll cover a Nightfall probably at a future date, but for right now,
does Nightfall have the lady who played Susan in Narnia and her beautiful eyes?
No, this one does. But
so that's why it's goated.
So, fun fact. So, this was the first time I believe that 343 had ever done this type of marketing. Because what this actually was, okay, so Halo 4 was coming out, and this was 343's first Halo game. This was their shot to make a good impression on the fan base. They didn't, still. But the point is, like, they gave us this series in like the 5 weeks up until release. That was supposed to be like a sort of a mini story featuring characters from the game that you will see in the campaign, but you'll get to see like their origin. And the chief among them, yes, Tab, I'm against that, was Captain Thomas Lasky, and he plays a major part in the games for going on.
Yeah, this is basically his origin story, like how he, this is how I became a man.
Yeah, so it's a glorified commercial for Halo 4, but they went too over. I don't think they went too overboard with it.
I mean, but if it's a commercial, it's a goddamn good one.
Yeah. So now let me tell you this. This is where this has an advantage over the series from Amazon. It's that, like this way, Chief and the Covenant don't show up until like episodes. I think episode 5, 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
But the story that they're telling is so compelling that you really don't mind. It still feels like Halo.
Yeah, they do a very good job of drip feeding you the information. And can I just say, I just need to make a comment. I love how the opening sequence is literally just like a recruitment ad. They basically edit it like an army recruitment ad where everybody's like, and this is a genius way as a writer. I think it was freaking genius to have that be like your framing network, because it's a good way to introduce your characters, their names, their motivations. Because normally this would be boring as heck, because you frame it as like an ad. It works so well. Like, this is freaking brilliant how they did that. Like, seriously.
And I like how next time you see the squad, it's in the middle of a training exercise. You don't know it's a training exercise yet, but it's basically framing this up because, okay, so to establish this, by this point in the Halo timeline, yes, there was still a war with the Covenant, but it was far enough away that not all of humanity knew what the Covenant was. So as far as they knew, we were still fighting like insurrectionists and like and rebels, because what happened in the Halo timeline is that as humanity expanded, the people that the like colonials that expanded began to see the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC, as essentially like oppressors, and like, why should you talk for our interests? Kind of like our own revolution in a way. So they started a civil war. And
no taxation without representation.
Yeah, fun fact: the civil war that Halo was fighting on, that is why the Spartan program was created. It wasn't the Covenant; it was to fight insurrections. It just happened to be that when the Covenant invaded, we had these super soldiers, which I really dug. I thought no. Technically yes, but not technically. So the location of this show is the Corbulo Military Academy. It's basically their version of West Point. And Lasky is currently Lasky's that character that's like enlisted because it was basically expected of him, because to get into Corbulo, your family has to be like a high up member in the government, the military industrial complex.
It's basically an academy for Nepo babies. But
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Nepo Baby Academy Army Edition.
Yeah. And the idea was that, okay, so he's this kid that like is in the war. He doesn't really want to be, because he doesn't see like the use in the fighting, particularly when they drip feed what happened to his brother. And his brother is the next step above him. Well, like Lasky was basically a regular trooper. His brother was an orbital drop shock trooper. Imagine them like SEAL Team 6. And they're the ones who are in like the drop pods. And you see them. I
don't know.
No, go ahead.
I feel like I don't know if like I classify ODST as, because they feel a little bit more common, because SEAL Team 6 is like the top of even SEALs. Because like I don't really feel like ODST would be even a SEAL, like maybe like Army Rangers.
Maybe the point is, well, because typically the Hell Jumpers, are the other name for the SEAL Team 6, are more like they're
Army
the
Airborne.
groups, kind of. They're the elite Army Airborne. They're the guys that like drop in behind enemy lines and like disrupt. So in a way, they'd be more like Green Berets, according to Geek Defense.
Just calling them SEAL Team 6, because SEAL Team 6 is like the top of the top. And even
SEAL Team 6 is probably the Spartans. I mean, when you think about it,
that I would agree with. Like Spartans are basically either Delta Force or SEAL Team 6.
Kind of funny. The ODSTs and the Spartans have kind of a rivalry, but it's totally one-sided, because the ODSTs see Spartans as like freaks and stuff, and then the Spartans are like, I don't care, we have a job to do. It's really funny, and they go into this in like Halo Legends and the other pieces of lore. So there's
You're
also
a freak. Whatever, bro.
Yeah. So it's essentially that. So you see Lasky, he essentially like he doesn't feel like he doesn't feel like he's cut out to be a soldier. And you also factor in the fact that he has a medical condition. So in order for like to like explain like long deep space travel, they essentially freeze you, and that's what the cryo sleep
the other
thing
thing
is.
I really like is this show does a really good job of subtle storytelling. We're like, yeah, he seems inept, but they give you these little hints that he's actually really smart. Like my favorite time is like, all right, good job on the checkmate, brother. You win again. He won. He keeps winning chess against an ODST soldier. You know.
Yeah.
And then the other one is when the ginger insults him, so he punches him insults his mother, and he basically demolishes the guy.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing that we're gonna go over here is that if you notice, Sully, and by he becomes a pretty shady member of the UNSC in the later material, but so he's like decoding a transmission. And so again, so what had happened was, so the Covenant has already struck humanity at this point, but again, the Office of Naval Intelligence, or like CIA, is essentially trying to like stop a panic from happening, is trying to like play propaganda and like just essentially like explain that away, because obviously at this point, if we found out there were aliens traveling through the galaxy trying to kill us, it would like really screw with us. That's why no one knows. That's why no one even knows who the Spartans are, because that was like super hush hush in terms of what that program was.
Yep.
So there's a story in Halo. This was like right after they got augmented. The Chief is 14 at this point, and he's in a boxing ring, and he's like training on like a ship or something like that. So ODSTs come in and basically pick a fight with him because they don't know who he is. So the ODST team sergeant orders them into the boxing ring, and let's just say the ODSTs get their asses kicked. Some of them die and become permanently paralyzed.
Came to the wrong house, motherfucker.
Oh yeah. It's because the Chief didn't know like his own strength. And then the Chief is like, but I hurt fellow soldiers. And then the Chief's drill sergeant is like, yeah, but they were a threat at this point. You neutralized the threat. I just love it. And maybe at some point we'll cover...
Quote,
yeah, go ahead.
The quote, Ender Wiggins. He won this battle and all other battles to come.
Yeah. Oh, damn. I thought Lasky was the only one that... No, a lot of them, if you pay attention to, like, the characters that were referenced, like, Sully showed up in the podcast for Halo 5, the audio podcast called Hunt the Truth, which turned out to be a lie. How'd the Chief do that? Well, he was already augmented at this point, and he was... Because he went to the gym because he wanted to test how strong he was. And it turns out, like, it's not just strength. Because what the Spartans can do, they have like a like faster perception of like slower perception of time, kind of like the Flash or Quicksilver, essentially like that. So that's why if you like
try,
yeah, go ahead.
Bullets.
Well, yeah, actually, you know what's a good representation of this in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. When he gets into a fight with Flash and like everything's slowing down and Flash goes to punch
some
him,
kind of
like this.
Halo sense.
Yeah, exactly. Halo sense. That's exactly the way it works.
It's his John Tingle.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm running back. You know what's kind of funny? We find out the last names of all the other Spartans but John.
Yeah. Also, I love how at the end all the other Spartans are with their helmet except Sheen.
Yeah.
All right, already this show ended. It improved itself better than the TV series.
I know. So moving on, what you get is throughout the show, I like again how they keep building toward the Covenant, because again, when Sully clears up the transmission and then you see like the Spartan helmet, you don't notice the small detail in the visor yet. Then later he goes, look in the visor, and then you see an elite. So they're like, the hell is that? And I'll explain to that once the attack starts. But again, to your point, I like how because they're telling like a lot of story in a very, very, very economic way that it works for the format that it's in.
Yeah, it's a style of writing that's kind of lost upon a lot of modern writers. I love it. I love this style of storytelling. But it's a lot of modern writers like, we need 5 minutes to explain something that can be explained in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is you need. See, the thing is, with modern writing, there's this assumption you need to treat your writers like they're brain dead idiots. And this show, which it's like, okay, you're obviously watching Halo, so if you're watching this, you're probably a Halo fan. Thus, you're probably really smart. So we're going to trust you.
Yeah, exactly. Tevia asks, so where does Foward Unto Dawn take place in the timeline? Pre-Halo 1, pre-Halo Reach, I would say I think it says 2531, so that's like around the time of Halo Wars taking place. So how do yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The Covenant actually looks pretty good. So the attack, so then you know what's kind of funny? Here's another piece of storytelling that I didn't notice until the second time I watched this as a series. Around episode 3 or 4, there's a shot where it just pans up into the sky and then into the night sky, and you see a Covenant drop pod just streak across the sky. So it's like they're still here. And then the attack happens. And again, I like how like slow this starts. So leading up to this, like I said before, the way that they like preserve your lifespan when you're traveling through space is that they freeze you. But it turns out Lasky has a condition where he's allergic to one of the compounds they inject into you to freeze you, and that makes it hard for him to breathe. So they give him a medical discharge. They give him a way out, and then the Covenant attacks.
Yeah, they basically the Covenant makes a choice for him. And one of the other smaller details that I really like is when you see older Lasky when he's getting changed. There's like a split-second shot where he's putting it on, and you see that he still has the scars. The fact that the allergy is still there, and he's probably been doing this for like 30 years at this point.
Yeah,
the fact that he soldiers through it, you know, and like they said, what that tells me is, yeah, he still has the allergy, but he can still function to a degree. But it's probably still really painful for him. But the fact that it's got to be even worse now that he's older, like breathing problems. The fact that he's like that says a lot about his character. And literally, a split-second shot, a blink and you miss it shot, says more about a character than 5 pages of writing could ever do.
Yeah, and so the Covenant attack happens, and then no one. It's like this massive thing. And so essentially, they're trying to evacuate all the students, and then they're evacuating them in this like space elevator. So essentially, it's like a tether that goes all the way into an orbital space platform, and then it's an elevator that goes all the way up there. Then the Covenant Corvettes just roll in very slowly, slow reveal through the clouds, and they just blast the elevator. I love that reveal, how the ships just land. All you see is the lights. And then they just come down, the music's playing, and I'm like, oh no. And then they blast it, and then you see bodies hitting the ground, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds 10 times better than the Paramount show was. Season 1 was way better. This is way better than season 1. So they're running, they're getting shot, and even it's interesting when you see like the Admiral that was like an ally of Lasky. She gets just shot off panel. And then, so they're alone, and it basically turns into a Resident Evil horror movie like thing, where now they're being hunted by cloaked elites.
I love the line where it's like, last 4 people on the academy, last 4 people on the planet, and even though you know everyone else is dead. I like that quick shot where like they show the general, like half of his face is in frame for like a split second. But it's like the horror of even the general getting killed. Yeah.
And then, so they're being hunted by the elite. And then they run into this room. Another of the students is killed. And then, so they do the most, here's the thing. They do the most stereotypical thing in these movies where like, oh, they're about to die, but it's done so well. The elite's about to stab them. And then all of a sudden he goes, oh, and then he just drops. And then the reveal of the chief, it's like, whoosh, down, and then he's like,
it's stereotypical, but it feels so good.
He's like, come with me if you want to live.
It was coming. It was like you knew it was coming, but it was one of those things where if it didn't happen, you would have felt mad that it didn't happen. Like,
yeah, I know, because I'm like, there's the opportunity for him to do it.
Sometimes cliches are good, okay?
Mm-hmm. And
an episode topic.
Yeah, exactly. And the action and the voice actor for Chief, actually, he sounds close enough to Steve Downes, but obviously he can't be Steve Downes because this is Chief significantly younger. And I'll get into that later.
So you're saying it's Steve Ups?
Yeah, exactly. Good. So
sorry.
I love where they're like, okay, we have to get to the evac point, armor up, and then they're like, but it's locked. He just punches a hole in the locker and pulls the door off.
Yeah, I love that.
That is so Chief. He's like, nope, boosh. Because here's the thing you have to understand about Chief. He's a no nonsense, no BS type of guy that when, like, if you give him an excuse, he's like, no excuses, boosh. And I like where, and then I like also where he leaves them there for a second, and then he starts walking back. All he sees is his footsteps, and he goes, "Who's the best shot here? You."
But yeah, like the thing I like is like you can just tell this like slow like basically this incident is what forged Lasky into the person he is. Because basically he was forced in a very short amount of time to let the soldier that was always inside of him to come out. Like he was, adversity, you either sink or you swim. And by God, did Lasky swim? Like he saw it. Like I love that moment where like you see Lasky pauses and he's like, "Oh, she is." He's like, "Yeah, I'm good."
Yeah, exactly.
And I love how the other's like, "I'm good too."
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And then they have the ambush by the jackals, and the jackals, by the way, are those aliens that were shooting at them from afar. And Chief's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go. You get him to the warthog," and the Chief is gone. And they're like, "Chief, where are you?" And he just runs, and then they essentially go back to their maneuvers, and like the three students are covering Lasky while he starts up the warthog, and he's like trying to turn it on. Then I like where like essentially Susan from Narnia runs out of ammo, so she picks up a Covenant carbine and just one shots that jackal, and I'm like, okay, because we've all had that. Shot. Yeah, it's a hell of a shot, exactly. And so then I love this.
You know what's even funnier that you mentioned Chronicles of Narnia? Do you want to know what her signature weapon was in Chronicles of Narnia?
Bow and arrow.
A bow and arrow.
Yeah, so it's like she's already known for that. But so then like all of a sudden the jackals go down like bum, bum, bum. And then there's the Chief with a pistol just running and just like, I got this. Boosh,
I mean, the pistols were OP in Halo 1, so.
Yeah, and this is around the time that pistol will be in service. So yeah, exactly. Plus it's all headshots. He's like, headshot, headshot, headshot. And there's explosions running around. And then he just jumps, hops in the warthog and goes, drive. And then he just run, and then they roll out. And I like how like Chief's on the turret, and he's like suppressing, and then it goes all quiet. And then like all of a sudden they like hit a jackal. The needler goes off, and then it turns out one of their own is injured. Now, my one thing is that by this point, the needle that was in her should have exploded, because that's what the needler does.
Maybe it's like a prototype and they haven't perfected it, or maybe
they had at that point in the timeline. Which, okay, that's fine. That's the one thing, but I understand why they didn't do it. And then it turns out we're being hunted by what? Hunters.
That's pretty on brand.
Yeah. And the cool little storytelling is that so Chief takes out one of the hunters because there's always two. The way the hunter race goes is that they're essentially pack animals in essentially packs of two, and they're actually a colony of worms packed into a suit of armor.
Okay, I have to say this. Always two they are, no more, no less.
A master and an apprentice, but which was destroyed? The master or the apprentice?
Well, in this case, both, but
yeah, exactly. And so they're being attacked by the hunter, and then this is the Lasky moment. This is like the defining moment where we're like Chief is trying to coordinate with the other Spartans and goes, okay, hold the dropship. We're almost there. I'm not going to leave them, but I need you to hold the ship. And then Chief essentially goes, no, go. I'll hold them off. And then Lasky goes, no. I'll be a decoy. You attack from behind, because that's actually the tactic you use to take out the hunter. See, this is why this is so Halo, because they're actually doing the tactics in the game that you use to fight hunters.
So to quote Captain America, Lasky is the one to dive on the hand grenade.
Exactly, and he kind of does. And this was the moment.
Play.
He even screams "Axios" as he runs, and I love the music that plays out. And then the Chief just takes a grenade. And by the way, they added this into Halo 3 now, where you can board the hunter on the back and stick a grenade in its worms. And I'm like, thank you from Halo 3 originally. So they put that back in. I believe they're going to add the original E3 Halo 2 demo that they originally had, which I'm like, please do that. That would be so much fun to play. That's my one problem. They don't play that song once during the entire series. But I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll go with that. And then there
are several moments where they could have played it too. Yeah.
And then they get on the dropship. We meet 2 other Spartans, Kelly 087 and Fred 104, and that's Blue Team. That's essentially Chief's team, and they had grown up together since they were 6 years old training. And I like how they take off the helmet. Around this time, I think there would be 14 or 15, the timeline, if I remember correctly. So yeah, 14 or 50 people in this armor. And I love where essentially, dang it, Solly asks, how old are you people? And he goes, well, that's classified. And
also, my favorite moment, like we're talking about cliche stuff, where he looks at the dude and says, well done, soldier.
Yeah.
Like, it's cliche, but it's like you need that to cap off his character arc.
Yeah, that was the
when Master Chief calls you a soldier, it's true.
First, remember, Lasky realized that all these Spartans are actually humans, then they're kids. But then you have, the guy that was like a badass that saved your life. He goes, yeah, you're good. Well done. He hands him the hunter piece, like a fragment of the hunter armor. And Lasky still has that. Speaking of the scene where he suits up for cryo, he still has that attached to his dog tags from his friend who also died. And you see him, and then all of these starships are going into essentially slip space to take out to find Chief. Okay, so context. In like the beginning of the movie / series, and then throughout the episodes, there was this subplot with Cortana where she's like falling apart. The reason why that happened. What? Go ahead.
Is it rampancy?
Yes. So what happens is, so after Halo 3, Chief goes into cryo sleep because he doesn't know how long they're going to be adrift. And actually, so what happens at the end of Halo 3, Chief and the Arbiter are link up on the UNSC ship, the Foward Unto Dawn. There you go. And they go through the portal, but the portal essentially closes right as the ship is going through and cuts it in half. Arbiter's half goes to Earth. Chief is like adrift in space, so he goes into cryo. The thing about Cortana, she's what's known as a smart AI. There are 2 types of AI: smart AIs and dumb AIs. Dumb AIs are just meant to manage one thing, like transportation or like a cannon or something like that. Smart AIs are the ones that we typically associate with AIs, where like there's no limit to what they can grow. But after 8 years, they start to deteriorate because it's like all this knowledge packed on. And Cortana's been active for like for way longer than that. So she's kind of going into rampancy. And then this comes to a head in Halo 4 and should have been the end of her plot. So that's essentially what that is showing. Chief was essentially in cryo, by the way, for 4 years. Before he found his way to like where essentially the ship crashed.
Do you know how long exactly Cortana was in service for?
Okay, hang on. So Cortana, put in service. Okay, so at this time, Cortana was put into service 8 years ago, and AIs deteriorate after 7. So by the time Halo 4 starts, she was in service for 8 years. So that's essentially how that works.
Like Halo 5, I think he's purely the villain in that one, right?
Because what happened is that, so in Halo 4 she dies, which she should have. So what happened was, so there's this thing that the Forerunners use called the Domain, which essentially gives a form of immortality or something like that. But it cured Cortana of her rampancy. And she kind of went crazy, and that's why she became a villain, which Halo Infinite promptly said, oh, yep, that's resolved off screen. We're done.
Wait, what?
Yeah, when Halo 5 starts, okay, so the original Chief's mission in Halo 5 was to shut down Cortana. So she was actually on a Halo ring at the time. The UNSC Chief ship arrives. is ambushed, and then the chief is like knocked out for 6 months. He wakes up, Cortana's dead. So they resolve that off screen, and then the plot of Halo 5 is you're trying to unravel the mystery of what happened to Cortana.
In Halo 5?
Halo Infinite. Halo 5 is like she's straight up the super villain essentially.
Yeah, because isn't like the weapon basically like a sister to? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Like the weapon in there, like Cortana's sister or whatever.
Kind of. So what happened is that the weapon is essentially kind of a clone of Cortana, except it's a clone of Cortana that never met the Chief. So you find out throughout Halo Infinite that Chief blames himself for what happened to Cortana. He goes, if I had only protected her more, she wouldn't have gone down this path. And then Chief has to come to terms with that. And it's actually kind of cool. That's why I say the story for Halo Infinite is great. It's just the multiplayer that turned people off. But that's essential. That essentially wraps up that arc really well. Now, to go back to Foward Unto Dawn again, it's kind of interesting. They released another a cool trailer before this movie was coming out. That was essentially an ad for Corbulo Academy. That was like a West Point ad, but then they're like, "We are at war. Join us, and we can protect humanity so that our children don't have to live in fear." It's like the stereotypical enlistment commercial, except there isn't a Marine fighting lava monsters. That was a commercial for the Marine Corps, by the way.
Do I? Oh my God, I remember that. I remember that commercial.
That's why it's the meme now that like when you join the military, they're like, wait a second, where's my sword fighting lava monsters?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
By the power of the Marines, I vanquish you. I use my Marine power to slice you in half. Like,
by the power of Iwo Jima, I have the power.
Wait. He can't use his Marine power. He doesn't have enough crayons.
Yeah, exactly. The sword is actually a crayon. So Tevia says, which from Chief Story is interesting, but I feel like the Banished from Halo Wars 2 raises so many questions. All right. So what Halo Wars 2 did is that there's a secret. They retcon. There's this whole other faction called the Banished, and it was so it's actually first. Well, let me explain this. So the Covenant. I'm trying to figure out where to start from this because it's a long process. All right. So 2525, the year, the Covenant stumble upon the planet Harvest, and it's obviously a farming planet by the name and all that stuff. But they find artifacts from the ancient race that built the Halo rings that the Covenant worships. So what's actually kind of cool is on the Covenant's home base, which is a space station called High Charity. Hey, what's up, RJ? William, how you doing?
What up?
So on the Covenant's home base, they have essentially a Forerunner ship called the Key Ship, and in there is like a Forerunner AI, and it basically says humanity is meant to inherit the responsibility over the entire galaxy. Now, this contradicts the entire Covenant religion. So the leaders of the Covenant, aka the prophets, hide it. They completely ignore it and say, the AI said we're supposed to wipe out all of humanity. And that's how you get like the
Heresy.
whole war. Yeah, it's essentially that. And then these guys would eventually take over and be the three prophets of the Covenant: truth, mercy, and regret, essentially. And then so what you find out is that in Halo Wars 2 is that Halo lore is dense. There's another faction called the Banished. Essentially, what this was there was a Covenant general named Atriox. He was essentially like his race called the Brutes were essentially used as cannon fodder, and he got tired of that because he's like, we fight hard, but we are just thrown to slaughter. So essentially, what happens is then Atriox rebels, but he essentially creates the group called the Banished, and it turns out so the Covenant had two enemies at this point: humanity and the Banished. They almost took out humanity. they never came close to destroying the Banished. That's how like badass this group is. And then they're the enemy in Halo Wars 2 and Halo Infinite. The rest of it is the other games and lore is the Covenant, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But did you hear that there's a Marine who made a crayon chocolate company? He's now a billionaire. Seems like it.
Oh my God. You could tell he's smarter than the average Marine.
Yeah, exactly. Some fake Lord Aleem account just offered to spend 10 Ethereum on my book when it comes out. I'm so sad. So, moving on with this. So, going back to what Foward Unto Dawn does well, I also like how it's like a drip feed, and you kind of are introduced to like the basic plot of Halo very, very well, I think, in terms of like it doesn't overwhelm you. It just throws in like stuff slowly. Like, you know what the UNSC is now. You know what the Office of Naval Intelligence ONI is. And then you know what, you know, there are Spartans. And you know there's Covenant, and then the Covenant attacks. They basically introduced even during their classes when they explain what an ODST is. ODST is like drop behind enemy lines and neutralize the enemy. Hey, what's up, Kingdom of Nerds? Yes, I am a great content creator. I appreciate that.
Oh, yes.
I love the Banished way more in Halo Wars 2 than in Halo Infinite because they felt more. Yeah, all right. The Halo Wars games essentially are like the RTS games of Halo, and they're like one of the a game series that proved that like you can make an RTS on the console, because originally RTSs were like mainly just a PC thing because you have to have hotkeys and everything like that.
Hey, don't you be bad for my brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Now, going into this, so this was the first time we ever got an actual Halo live action like movie / series, because they had like live action trailers, which were like
the only time we've gotten it. It's a shame they never made a miniseries out of this.
Yeah. There was fun fact for anyone that doesn't know, there was going to be a Halo movie by Peter Jackson, I believe, and then it eventually evolved into the District 9 movie.
Oh no, okay. There was going to be a Peter Jackson movie. Then he left, and then Neil Blomkamp came in and was gonna do a Halo movie. Then that fell apart, and he to the point where they actually had built sets, and they basically stripped out all the Halo stuff and made District 9.
Mm-hmm. That's essentially what happened. Yeah.
No, the District 9 was Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah. So Geek Defense says, by the way, the reason that the humans were to inherit the mantle is because before the start of history, the precursors wanted humans to become heirs to the mantle instead of the Forerunners. Okay, so what happened is that, so here's the evolution of the galaxy. All right, so you have the precursors are like the ones who created all life in the universe and everything like that. They're the god race. They created the Forerunners and humanity. The precursor, so essentially in Halo, there's this thing called the Mantle of Responsibility. It's essentially who dominates the galaxy, who's the hegemon, if you will. So they wanted humans to have that, but the Forerunners wanted control. So the Forerunners rebelled against the precursors and banished them. So
wait. So to put this in Lord of the Rings terms,
yeah,
the precursors were like the Valar spirits. The Forerunners are like the elves.
Yeah.
And basically that would be like the elves learning that the kingdom of men was to inherit responsibility, then they rebelled.
Yes. So here's where it gets really cool. You know what the Flood is, right?
A thing that happens in Florida every once in a while.
Well, yeah, but the Flood are those zombie things in Halo. I'm sure you've seen them before.
I mean, we both fought against them.
So here's those are precursors. What happened is the precursors went into stasis, and then the stasis thing kind of fell apart, and then they were and then the bodies were turned into a fine powder. They crash landed on a planet inhabited by like ancient humanities, and essentially what happened was the humanity found the ship and found these like pods filled with dust. So they were like, okay, this is interesting. So they fed it to the animals, And at first, the animals were like docile. Then these growths started to form on the animals. Then they became aggressive. And then the floods happened. Then humanity was running and then actually led the flood to the Forerunners.
I thought a precursor was somebody who said a bunch of swear words before battle.
Nice, thank you.
And I'm sorry. Here's the thing. I know jack crap about Halo lore. So, like, Jared's doing the explaining. I'm doing the funny.
Yeah, exactly. So then what happens is the flood nearly wipe out the Forerunners. So the Forerunners have this solution to the flood. What they say is, okay, so what they start doing is they covertly collect samples throughout the galaxy of all life and just lock it away. Then they what?
Please highlight Geek Detective's comment, please.
Oh, Phoenix, you're missing a gold mine. Yeah, exactly. Lasky was too non-competitive, total character assassination. No, he wasn't. But so what they decide is that we're going to starve the flood of their food source. Hence the Halo rings. And then the Halo rings are spread throughout the galaxy. They fire it. It wipes out all life in the galaxy. And then essentially life is slowly seeded with the samples that the Forerunners gathered, and then life goes back, and then life essentially repopulates. Then 100,000 years of evolution happens, and then we get to Halo in the modern day.
Nature found a way.
Yeah, and then what happens is then you get to Halo Reach, which is essentially telling the fall of Reach. Now, what's kind of funny is, so the Fall of Reach novel technically came out before the game came out. So what happens at the game...
Survive.
What?
Objective, survive.
Yeah, exactly. So the Halo Reach... So the Fall of Reach novel comes out first, and it's basically the origin of the Spartan program and everything like that. Halo novels in the early days were fantastic. So... in the Halo game, on the back of the box, it tells you are the last Spartan. Then you read Halo 4, then you read the Halo books, and it's like, actually, it's like essentially with Order 66 in Star Wars, where they make you think in Episode 3 all the Jedi are dead, but then throughout the lore, you're like, nope, he survived. It's essentially that.
I swear, half the Jedi Council survived Order 66.
Kind of. It feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so then most of the Spartans, most of them are killed. Yeah, 100% most of them are killed. But the Chiefs team of Kelly, Fred, and then Linda is the sniper. She's all of them survived the Fall of Reach, and they rendezvous in the novels. And then they're like sprinkled throughout Halo lore. And then Halo 5 was the first time we actually saw them in a game. Unfortunately, they didn't, because here's the problem that Halo ran into. Here's what 343 did with Halo. That was a problem. They relied too much on you reading the ancillary material that they didn't explain a lot of story going into all of their games.
Wait, so you're telling me that someone from 343 did this, they got fired, and they went over to Lucasfilm?
Oh, yeah, probably. Like, essentially, you have...
I am so glad that no other company never made that same mistake of relying on ancillary materials to explain your dumb plots ever again.
Yeah, Actman actually did a fantastic video of this in his Halo 5 discussion where he goes, no longer can you just pop a game in and enjoy it. Now you got to read the comic books. You got to read the novels. You got to listen to the podcast. You got to watch the series. You got to do your homework or you're not a real fan. And that's essentially, but
don't forget to eat the candy bar too. You got to get all the lore dumps.
Yeah, you got to get everything. And yeah, obviously as a Halo fan, I was doing that. But the problem is the average gamer is not going to do that because, like with Halo, like Halos 1, 2, and 3, with the original Halo games, all you had to do was play the previous game. And you could kind of understand it. With Reach, you didn't have to read anything.
It's an additional ancillary material for uber nerds where we're like, okay, maybe a character from the extended material shows up and the story doesn't get referenced, but like, hey, this character's here, that means this actually happened, but it has no effect on the main games. You do not need to know it. Like, okay, maybe like, oh yeah, I've been to South America before, didn't have a good time. Like, oh, they just referenced this expanded novel that I love. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the problem with 343 right into. They started to rely too much on the ancillary material. Like, you find out why the Covenant is still fighting you in Halo 4, even though the war ended in Halo 3, in a novel.
Yeah.
And then you find out you find out where Blue Team came from in Halo 5, where this came from in the novels and the comic books and the audio podcast that they had leading up to Halo 5, which, to be clear, again, I'm not against ancillary material expanding stuff, but you can't make it required reading / viewing to understand what's going on in your game.
And that's the problem, is when you have someone engaged with a singular product, you can't guarantee that they've engaged with all the other ancillary material. Like, that's a problem that Star Wars has run into, and Marvel is the MCU is kind of running into, where it's either you have all this ancillary. It's like with the MCU, where people went into Multiverse of Madness, they're like, wait, why is Wanda a villain now? What's all this multiverse stuff? What's Westview?
Or it's like here's the other thing. People watch Mandalorian season 3 without watching the book of Boba Fett and said, I thought Grogu was with Luke.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So, by the way, fun fact, the only reference that this is given to in Halo 4, in the actual game, Foward Unto Dawn, is a throwaway line. And you meet up with Lasky for the first time. He goes, obviously, he reintroduces himself and says to Tom Lasky, first officer of the Infinity. Then he says, never thought I'd see you again.
And that's how you should do it.
That's how you do it.
Like, it's like I said, they referenced it. Like, if you never watched Foward Unto Dawn, like that is a perfectly way to do it. But people are like, oh, they're like, you know what you're referencing. But for people who've never seen it, it's like, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then later on, it mentions about how Lasky attended Corbulo Academy. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Because again, it's like, okay, if it says never thought I'd see you again, it's conceivable that she probably ran into him at some point during his career.
Yeah, it's all stuff to where you don't need to see this to like understand it. It's like you said, a normal person can kind of use their deductive reasoning and be like, okay, yeah, they like that. So a normal person would be like, oh, he met Chief at some point earlier in his career. That's all it really says on the surface.
Yeah. Tevia asks, okay, so wait, didn't Mass Effect 3 do the same thing with its tie-in comics and novels? To a degree. The thing about Mass Effect, because, in between 2 and 3, Nick, they did like an animated movie that explained like what happened to one of the squad mates. The difference is, here's why Mass Effect did this a little better. The story that animated thing says, James tells you in the game when you have a conversation with him. Like he outlines the whole story. He goes, when you have a conversation with James and you actually like when you're sparring with one of the squad mates named James, he tells you the story. He goes, we were attacked by some collectors. I lost a lot of my squad because I had to make a tough choice. He basically gives you the plot points of that movie.
Let me try and suss out what would happen. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
So based off of what you said, what they did in the game is, like he said the bullet points enough for you to understand what happened. But if you wanted the full story, you could go watch it.
Yes.
You don't need to watch it because all the important information was given in there.
Yeah, exactly. And like in terms of the comics, of the tie-in comics, those were just additional stories that showed what were these characters doing then, that again they tied it in dialogue. They don't just say, okay, so this happened. No, it's like Gary says, okay,
I like Dave Lay's comment. It's time for me to go uber nerd.
Oh, real quick, I just want to answer one more question. So what happened to the Didact? Okay, so in Halo 4, Nick, the villain is a forerunner. So you find out there was this general named the Didact, and he hated humanity. So much so that the cyborgs that you fight in Halo 4 are ancient humans that he had converted into robots. So he was put into stasis. He remained in stasis until the modern day. he gets awoken. The chief fights him, and then he defeats him. He essentially he gets teleported to a Halo ring where Chief and Blue Team essentially destroy him, and then he's brought back in a novel.
All right. Yes.
Right. All right.
Highlight Dave's comment.
First, so Dave says, how do you feel about the way Animatrix and Enter the Matrix tied into Matrix Revolution?
All right. David, Jared, shut the F up.
And wait, I'm going to add also the Matrix comics. Go.
Okay. So when you're referring to the Animatrix tying it into the Matrix, what you're really talking about is Final Flight of the Osiris. That is the only thing that's kind of required reading, quote unquote, for the game. Everything else is side material that are cool, but you don't need to know. Everything else is unnecessary. The only thing that's necessary is Final Flight of the Osiris, which is a prequel to the game Enter the Matrix, which that in and of itself ties into the game. Okay, so Enter the Matrix is basically playing the game itself is basically happening parallel to the Matrix Reloaded. Okay, so you see some characters coming in and out. It basically tells the story of Niobe's crew, which is Niobe, Ghost, and their operator, who I can't remember their name of. And Final Flight of the Osiris is referenced in the game. We basically got 3 layers of stuff here. You got Matrix Reloaded, which is the main material, Enter the Matrix, which is the secondary material, and Final Flight of the Osiris, which is tertiary. Because Final Flight of the Osiris is basically leads into Enter the Matrix and is referenced in the Matrix Reloaded. I'll answer Dave's comment here in a second. I know what he's talking about. Sorry, I was on a train there. What I would say is everything in Enter the Matrix is necessary. Like there's a line where it says geotherm scans confirm the final transmission of the Osiris. That's the reference in the movie. And then in the game, they basically pick up the transmission. None of it, none of the stuff you need to watch do the other. It helps, but it's not necessary. And can you highlight Dave's comment
Yes.
about the kid, please?
Yeah.
So he's talking about the kid, like that guy. And there's a line in there where it says, I didn't save you, kid. You saved yourself. So there is a episode in the Animatrix called Kid Story, which is basically how he escaped the Matrix. Basically, what he means by him saving himself is the kid, like basically at one point, he believed in Neo, so he jumped off the roof of his school. He basically exited before he hit the ground. That's where he saved himself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did I really do that in one breath?
Nerd!
You saw my Twitter post.
Yeah, I did.
Sorry, there is a Matrix comic. Jared actually is going to the shelf.
Behold! I got them on my LTS fairly recently.
Sorry to take over your show for a minute. It's just
that's fine.
Dave asked something that I was uber that I knew a lot about, so I had to flex a little bit.
Yeah, Brown, we're talking about Halo Foward Unto Dawn, which is
we just did a quick Matrix break.
Yeah, and the Matrix. Back to Halo. Wait, Tevye asked, the story good in the Matrix comics? I would say so.
I haven't read them, so I can't comment.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but going back to Halo, yeah, the lore is extremely dense, like very dense. So what happened? So here's the origin of the Spartan program for you to understand this, and then I'll wrap up. So, like I said before, humanity's in the middle of a civil war against like the insurrectionists. So there was this scientist named Carver who essentially did a simulated study. And it showed that if the Civil War continued, the entire UNSC would collapse. So Dr. Catherine Halsey, also voiced by Jen Taylor in the games, came up with what she saw as the only way to stamp out the insurrection, create an army of super soldiers, but in order for at the time the augmentation like abilities was like very limited, so they had to recruit kids. So what happened is that they kidnapped kids at age 6 from all over the outer colonies of the UNSC. In other words, imagine this: it's the planets that were rebelling. Their kids were being kidnapped and conscripted into the other army. So they chose 6 because children's minds are like, to quote Halsey, children's minds are more susceptible to indoctrination and their bodies are more resilient to augmentation. So for the first like 6 years of their lives in the UNSC, they were put through essentially Marine Corps boot camp in terms of how hard it was. A few kids died. Then they were put into augmentations when they were 14 years old, and half of the candidates either died or got debilitating medical conditions that like a few of them like were like all scrunched up. A few of them like lost the ability to move. Some of them healed, but essentially once they were done, essentially you had like soldiers that had basically Wolverine bones, unbreakable bones, and insane reflexes. And so the Spartans were deployed against the insurrectionists, and they kidnapped their leader. They were in, they were out, they were fine. Then the Covenant strikes, and then Halsey goes, okay, I have the soldiers, now I need the armor. So then she gets Project Mjolnir, which is the armor, which it turns out the other reason why they augmented the kids is because the armor was so reactive that if any unaugmented person got in the armor and like tried to move a little bit, like moving their arm, it was so reactive that it would go like this and break their arm in half. It was that intense, but so it was kind of
reaction.
Yeah, kind of like that. So essentially, Halsey asked. So as soon as Halsey showed them the armor, she wasn't sure if the augmentations would work. So she asked, "Okay, do I have a volunteer to test this? Bear in mind that you could die from this." Chief is the first one to raise his hand. He puts on the armor and he moves fine. And it was actually kind of funny is at first he picks up this helmet and he doesn't really know his strength yet, so he shatters the helmet. Like that's how like crazy all this is. Then he puts on the helmet, and then obviously it's it's more or less the armor he wears in the games. And then it iterates throughout the entire like the run of the games, which actually this is covered in the animated movie Foward Unto Dawn, which we may cover next month. We'll see. So far, this is actually performing pretty well, so we probably will. But anyway, so I think that's a good place to first wrap it up. So, Nick, how would you rate this series out of 10?
I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Some of the Hunter CGI can be a bit dodgy when viewed up close. The Covenant soldier looks okay, but he got limited. But yeah, 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, with me, I'd give it a 10 out of 10 because I loved all the action and everything. Like, yes, exactly. I love all the action. The action's great. The non-action part of the story is great. So I don't care that they save all the action for the end. You can learn from this. Halo TV series by Dave says, yep, even down to their connection with armor, Spartans are very inspired by Space Marines in 40K. Oh, yeah. By the way, there was a Warhammer animated movie that we should watch sometime. That'd be fun. Yeah, it's very, very similar to how Space Marines are created. Exactly. And then Brown ass says, anyone seen the Astonishing X-Men animated series? No, I haven't. There was an Astonishing X-Men animated series.
Isn't that the series based off of the run by He Who Must Not Be Named?
X-Men animated series. I know that they did a series of motion comics.
Yeah, Astonishing X-Men. That was written by He Who Must Not Be Named, right?
Yeah, the big douchebag.
Yeah,
it's essentially the motion comic of all that. Yeah, exactly. But so essentially, in terms of like what we're going to cover next month, we'll announce the lineup soon. But it's going to be a pretty solid thing. Maybe we'll even get Sam on. But so In terms of like what you can expect from Comics League, Britt and I are going to be discussing in depth why DC disrespects Wonder Woman. And then on Wednesday, I'm deciding between doing a fan suggested video or saying how I would write Wonder Woman. And then on Under Two Capes, we're going to talk about how we would, who is the Marvel's version of Wonder Woman. And again, yes, it is. And then I'll let you guys know. I'll let you guys know what the movie is going to be for next week. So, all right. So, Nick, where can we find you, and what have you got coming out on your channel?
All right. In little more than an hour, you can catch me wandering the Mojave Wasteland with the rest of my crew over on my YouTube channel. Yep, that's right. We're still playing Fallout New Vegas. It's pretty awesome. Also, my Indiegogo is still going on, so if you want some sweet, hot Cyberpunk Samurai action, you can check out my comic, Turn Saturday #4. I'm sure Jared will be posting the link here shortly.
Mm-hmm. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, so we just passed 50%. Thank you, everyone who has gotten that so far. But if you have yet to get it, I know Dave's gotten it, so he's awesome. But the rest of you want to be awesome, please make sure to grab a copy, and I would be very much appreciated.
Yeah, the link is going in right now. There you guys go.
There you go. So if you haven't checked out Trent Samurai yet, please consider doing so. Yeah,
it's a pretty good comic, if I may say so myself. And, all right, so stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs with General Zod, Zois, and Maxabat for life. See you later.